Welcome to the late hour. It is 12 p.m. I should have started like 60 to 90 minutes before this. Let me get my music sorted real quick. How is everyone doing? Music. No music. Okay. All right. So, there was stuff to do today. We had to. Summer is coming. Summer is definitely coming. Temperatures are now regularly hitting 30 degrees every day. It's not cooling down anymore properly, and that means we had to do things like clean our fans because we'll be using them regularly now, and they needed a thorough cleaning from last summer. The amount of dust on there was probably as much as the fan itself. So yeah, that needed to be done, and other things and such, changing blankets, etc. Because it's getting hot. So what do I last week on Monday I played um the Barbarian Prince, the board game. And Barbarian Prince is a 1981 solo Hexcrawl board game where you play the eponymous Barbarian Prince and you crawl through a hex map, encountering various things, fighting monsters, gaining allies, getting into town and into trouble, and needing to find lots of money just because of whatever plot happens to be the case. So your throne has been usurped, and it's like, oh, I need money to raise an army. Not super important, right? It's just we need a goal. It was quite a bit of fun, very new experience, but also I have gained an appreciation of Hexcrawl, and I have now actually experienced some of it, and can now say, right, what does it feel like? What was good, what was bad, what was missing, what do I want to keep, what do I want to add, and so on and so forth. So, um, not a quick review, but like an encapsulation of my thoughts of what made the hex crawl work and what didn't make it work. And what I want to add or remove or change, etc. So, how do I title this? Um, Thoughts on Barbarian Prince. Things. Oh my god, I can no longer draw lines there. Things I think went well, and things I think didn't go too well, and so on. So, what was very important was an overall goal. Overall goal, right? So you have to get 500 gold pieces. How you get there doesn't matter. You can rob houses, you can delve ruins, you can fight people and just loot them, etc. Doesn't matter, right? But you had to have some sort of overall goal to help you give a direction for the decisions you are making, right? Maybe you say, "Oh, I want to rob a house." Yeah, but why do you want to rob a house? Because I need the money. And that always comes back down to it. So, an overall goal, it doesn't have to be such a big overarching goal as like, "Oh, if you complete this, you win." It can be smaller goals, but some sort of direction is definitely necessary. And this is not new insight, right? But it's good to put it down. The second is a time limit. Um, in Barbarian Prince, you have 10 weeks to complete your goal, right? If you fail to complete your goal within the 10 weeks, you lose the game. So the time limit also makes sure that everything you do is comes at an opportunity cost, is a meaningful decision, right? And time limit is the easiest limit. There are other limits in the game, but essentially you have a limited budget of time and you are spending this budget, right? And it's like, okay, do I go west or do I go east? Do I stay here or do I move to a different area? Um, right? It's like I could get better opportunities in a different area than I can here, but there's risk involved in traveling, right? So it includes a lot of risk reward. Like it makes risk reward decisions and evaluations meaningful. If you didn't have a time limit, you could just stay somewhere and just exhaust a place um but for all of its adventure and then move on and be like, yeah, okay. The kind of like the modern checklist RPG, right? Checklist game, the Ubisoft bloat kind of deal, where it's like, yeah, I have 50,000 quests in my quest journal. Yeah, I just checklist them and do them one by one, and then that's what the game becomes. If you have time limits where you don't have to lose at the end of the time limit, but maybe things get more complicated. Maybe an important person dies, right? That's pretty harsh. Or maybe an enemy faction gains power, or an opportunity is lost, or something along those lines, right? Um, then that can help a lot. So time limit. Let me put comment behind here. Um, makes decisions meaningful, averts checklist bloat. And over here, overall, is gives direction and meaning. Okay. What else? What else is here? Um, resource management. So Barbarian Prince has a big resource management, which is food. Right? You constantly need to have food available. And I mean, the hunting was relatively easy in the beginning. I don't know if it becomes more difficult later on. But essentially it's like, oh, do I stay in this area where hunting is easier, or do I don't know, move into like a swamp or a desert or a mountain or something where hunting is a lot more difficult? Do I have enough supplies to risk this trip? Do I risk another day or two in this hostile environment and hope that I can hunt enough food to last, or will I begin starving? Right? So again, it adds another layer of risk reward. Um, okay. And you can get very detailed. You can track food and water and, I don't know, medicine and other things. It depends on how detailed you want to get. At some point, I think if all of these resources are all toward the same goal, right? If you don't have water, you enter starvation mode. If you don't have food, you enter starvation mode. If you don't have this and that, you enter starvation mode. Then at that point, I think, for me personally, I think you can simplify it down to just one resource instead of having to worry about a whole bunch of different things. But, option is there. Um, what was also important is knowledge of, let me put this, rough lay of the land. Right? So In Barbarian Prince, you have the entire hex map visible, open, and available at the beginning, right? You know exactly if I move here to this particular hex, I will hit this castle, I will reach it. There are, I think, later versions of Barbarian Prince, that have a fog of war kind of effect, where you start where the entire hex map is split up into multiple cards, and you shuffle them, and then as you step off a current card, you randomly draw one of the other cards and slap it on there to the edge, and that gives you your next section of terrain. That can also work, and I think that is better, which is why I put rough in here, right? So this is travel versus exploration, right? But some knowledge, oh god, of oh my god, I cannot write anymore. Geography is good. So if you know, all right, this town we're looking for is toward the south, or if we follow this river, we will hit this area that we want to find, and so on and so forth, right? So that helps. Okay, options for what to do. So in Barbarian Prince, really the only option you have in a hex is to travel. Or not to travel, right? So you can choose to spend a day inside a hex for various reasons. To rest mainly, to improve your chances at hunting, and to find a cache that you have hidden there, or you can travel. But then travel is also, if you try to travel, you might get lost, and then you could just get stuck in the hex, and then you lose your turn, essentially. I'm not a big fan of that. I want there to be multiple things to do in a hex, including travel, right? So traveling to a different hex is also one of these actions you can do, but you can do things like search the hex. You can do things like, I don't know, travel to one of the sites that are there and investigate an adventure site. You can do things like hunt and forage, or whatever, right? There might be different things, but I want to see if it's possible to include more than that. And in Barbarian Prince, you do have that as well. If you're in a town or in a village and such, you have other things that you can do inside that hex. You can rob a town, you can study history, you can, hire hirelings and so on. It's a lot of different things to do. What I didn't like, so getting lost equals losing turn. And this is this is tied to the previous thing that I was talking about. So in Barbarian Prince, essentially, because the only real option you have when you're in a hex that is not a civilization is travel to a different hex. That is really the only thing you have. And whenever you travel out of a hex into another one, you have a chance of getting lost. And when you get lost, you get stuck in your current hex and you lose the turn. This is not a risk reward assessment. Not really. This is, you have to travel, and when you travel, you have a chance to get lost. Right? So it's not, if I choose to travel, I have a chance of getting lost. If I choose to do other things, I don't, right? So it's like, which one do I pick? But no, in Barbarian Prince, you basically only have, okay, it's my turn now, and part of the turn is traveling, but I can just randomly lose the turn. Now, sure, there is the aspect of it is easier to get lost in some terrains than others, and if you're traveling along a road, you don't get lost. But there are too few roads on the map to be really meaningful. Most of travel is forced to be along wilderness without roads, right? Um, if there were more roads, then that would be a more meaningful decision. And most of the roads were in the south of the map, and you start off way in the north. So that's also like you have to travel half the map before even getting the choice of do I travel along a road or not. Um, and also the idea of, oh, if I travel into mountains, it's easier to get lost than if I travel into farmland. But mm, that's, I feel like mountains and farmland and such are already differentiated by things like different hunting chances, different encounters you can have there, different events that can happen in there, and so on. And if you have an overall goal, it's like I want to travel to this ruin to loot the ruin, and this ruin requires me to travel through the mountains. You're not really making a choice, right? You're not making a choice here. Um, I can either travel 2 tiles through mountain and risk getting lost, or I can travel, I don't know, 12 tiles through farmland and countryside and have a lower chance, not even not a no chance, but a lower chance of getting lost. That's not really a choice. That's a mathematical equation, right? And at that point, you just say, I'm traveling through the mountains. Um, you're not you're just comparing numbers at that point. So that is not a good thing, right? If travel is the only option, right? Not a risk reward evaluation, right? And it's just a solving equation at that point. Right? Which path will get me a lower average chance of getting lost and so on. Right? You can just calculate that. So no, not a good thing. What I do like, clear, unified, or not even unified, but like clear systems for various actions. Right? And an easy base that you can build off of, right? Obviously need to flesh out and add things like story or RP opportunities and such. In Barbarian Prince, due to the nature of the game, you're basically playing against the board game. Everything is solved by die rolls. Um, it's like I want to talk to this person. Okay, die roll, die roll, die roll. Okay, he joins my party. Done. Um, so that's basically what's happening. But like, if you put such a system into an RPG with a GM and such, then you can actually flesh it out a lot, right? But there's a lot of good ideas in there, good bases to build on. Um, what else is there that I like? Uh, lots of inspiration for level design. Hey, awkward pain. Yeah, the first week was fun while I was watching. How are you doing? How was your weekend? Yeah, it was I ended up figuring out that I messed up a lot of rules. Like holy heck, a lot of rules, and we didn't get very far beyond that. Because at some point it was like, huh, I am now completely lost as to where I'm supposed to be, how the rules are supposed to function. I don't think I actually finished the second week. In Barbarian Prince. But there was a lot of interesting things that I learned from it. So yeah, and that's what we're going through right now. Lots of inspirations for level design. And what I mean by that is things like encounter tables, right? The encounters themselves, very varied. It's not just, oh, you find this monster, you find that monster, and then this monster and that monster, and so on, and you just fight different monsters. No, there's a lot of different things happening. Pretty restful. That is amazing to hear. Restful is always good. Each game ends up being completely different because of those tables. Exactly. And they use D66 tables, which is really cool. Gives you a lot of different options. It's a lot of prep that goes in, but once you have it, you don't ever have to touch it again. Emergent storytelling, right? I'm reminded of that dwarf we met, and then suddenly it's like, oh, actually, this is a leader of a dwarf band. It's like, oh, okay, whole bunch of dwarves all of a sudden. Thought about doing a journal log story regarding the game. Are you asking? Not really. Definitely not this one because so much just went. No, I had thought about it. Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, I would say like the first game we played on stream was really messy. A lot of it was also forgetting rules of not realizing rules existed, so the game became very wild, right? It's like, oh, I'm at a river. I'm just gonna randomly raft, and then later on, I try to cross a river again, and then the dice give me, oh, you actually find rafts people. It's like, oh, so I just kind of rafted on my abs or something before that. Cool. You know, things happen. So yeah. Encounter tables encounters themselves, strong ass abs. Exactly. No, it's like these glorious abs are hydrophobic. I can raft on them all day long, or something. I don't know what I'm talking about. So what else was there? Encounter tables, encounters, emergent storytelling, different settlements. Oh, settlements, not ettlements. Right? They had like spend a day searching for information or something in a town, and then they had a different table for each town, which is really cool. That really gives gives each settlement a different character, and actually makes it meaningful where you travel to. So that's really, really good. Was there anything else? It's giving some ideas about game design as well. Like, what kinds of stats do I need? What kinds of abilities do I want? Ideas for system design past just the Hexcrawl itself. Right? So things like stats, abilities, subsystems, and so on, right? There was not a lot of stats. Yeah, there wasn't. And only one of them was randomly determined, but that one was really important. So it's not even like, oh, I might be good in this stat, but bad in that stat. So it pushes my play into a certain direction, right? It's like, no, you're just good or bad good luck, right? So just fighting stats with stats health, basically, yeah. And the fighting stat and health stat are fixed, right? So it's basically just are you a brick or are you Einstein? Well, not Einstein, Bear Grylls, right? Um, and depending on it's basically a difficulty dial. If you have low wits, you're playing on higher difficulty, and that's it. That's all it is. Um, so yeah, a little. I'm not necessarily big on everything needs to be balanced out and such. Like I see the charm in randomly determining stats for certain game styles, but at least there has to be like, oh yeah, my character is good in this area and bad in that area. I like that. Which I guess is also some a kind of balance, right? So yeah. Um so what I'm now looking for is actually this whole thing is giving me an idea of instead of starting the design of the game from like, oh, what are the core stats? What are the core gameplay loops and such? I mean, I'm still starting at the core gameplay loop, but now the core gameplay loop is the hex crawl. A lot of games start the core gameplay loop at a very small thing like a skill check or something else, some like combat round or maybe like dungeon crawl and such. And I'm now saying no, I want to start at the hex crawl level. I want the hex crawl core gameplay loop is the hex crawl, right? Let me write that a little bit clearer. So, game system builds off, yeah, hex crawling. Everything else is subordinate. And even in Barbarian Prince, you had like a fighting system, right? That was basically just a subsystem of the hex crawl. Um, now obviously, if I am designing this RPG, I can go more into more detail. I can go a dungeon crawl system, I can go a combat system, I can go like social encounter system, and so on. But I'm still basing everything off of you are in the hex crawl, and then when you hit these um encounters, when you hit these events, then you go to the more specific system. Um, I like to think of it, or not like to think of it. I am now thinking of it in this way. So, for example, if you're dungeon crawling, if your core gameplay loop is something like the dungeon crawl, right? Go into dungeon, beat up all the monsters, get all the gold, come out, get stronger, go into a bigger dungeon, and so on and so forth. Right? That's your core gameplay loop. And then you have, oh, we enter a combat in the dungeon crawl, so now we enter the combat system. Or things like, oh, we enter um a locked door, so now let's go into the lock picking system, which is usually just a simple skill check, but whatever. Inside the dungeon crawl, I'm now saying, hold on, let me take another step back and let me go to the hex crawl, right? And then the hex crawl, you enter a dungeon. Okay, now we go into a dungeon system, but it's still using the hex crawl as a base. Whereas in something like D&D, it goes the other way around. Combat is the base, and then everything else has to be based off that, I think, right? Anyway, that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. I'm not sure if you are writing anything down for us. We're on the main screen. Oh, thank you for letting me know. I forgot to switch screens. I've been writing this the whole time. Aha. So, very quick recap because why not? Right? We're now going into the design. So, overall goal, right? Hi, capsize. Yes. I know. Freak out, everyone. I forgot to change screens. Um, well, how was your weekend, Capsize? I am sitting here in my own sweat right now. Turn up the fan. Okay. Seemed like you might have been the way you were sounding out words. Yeah, okay. Very good point. Okay, so thoughts. Overall goal. There is an overall goal, right? Now in Barbarian Prince, it's a win or lose overall goal. In an RPG, it would be like quests, missions, etc. Right? So the green now is for the RPG. Quests or missions. Right? Okay. Time limit is always good, right? But time limit doesn't have to be a you lose when the time runs out. It can be things like faction power or opportunities, right? Um, or growing danger, or something like that, right? The game keeps going, but depending on if you succeed in your quest or fail in your quest after the time limit, the world changes, right? Maybe a faction becomes more powerful and now gains more territory. Oh, hey, that's interesting. You failed the mission, but the game goes on, and now it's just a changed status quo. Resource management, right? So I'm gonna try with one resource per restriction. I'm gonna call it restriction for now. It's not a good word, but things like starvation, right? If you have starvation as a factor, then only have food. Don't also have water and other things, right? If you have, I don't know, sickness in there, only have like one type of medicine, maybe. Don't have a lot of different things in there. I don't know, right? But one resource per restriction or condition, probably a better word. Um, Knowledge of rough lay of the land, right? So this would be things like rumors, uh, treasure maps, treasure maps, right? Those really poorly hand drawn, half burnt treasure maps that are like, oh yeah, here's the mountain range, and then there I can see a river, and then some random X where like treasure is here. It's like, ha, okay, so it kind of sort of tells me where it is. So we know roughly which direction we have to go, but that's good enough, right? It's like, okay, so we go to the mountain range and then we follow this river, and then roughly here we start heading north or something, right? Good enough. Um, like what you could have done with the troll if you beat it. Uh, the, you mean the troll skin thing? Um, yes, yes. So yeah. I remember now. The event gave the rumor of the Lord of this the Lord of this castle wants a troll skin. Yeah. Exactly. And then you might learn of that rumor and be like, yeah, the castle is down south along this road, right? If you travel down south and you find this road and continue heading south, you will head to the castle. And you like in Barbarian Prince, the entire map was visible. Um, but in a Hexcrawl, like the map should be covered in fog of war, and you might have some knowledge, right? You might see the mountain range in the distance. You will probably see a mountain range in the distance, right? Or you might know, oh, towards the east, if we travel there, after a week we will hit the coast, right? Because traveling merchants told us that, right? It's like, yeah, go east, after a week you hit the coast, done. Or like, oh, there's a river here and we can follow the river, right? Things like that. Or people are like, oh yeah, there's rumors of this ruined tower down south in the swamps. It's like, okay, so there's swamps with the ruined tower down south. Maybe. Right? Things like that. But you don't have the map uh completely uncovered, but you have some pointers. Oh, the music is a bit loud. You have some pointers as to where you might want to go, and then you can say, the ruined tower sounds interesting. Let's gear up for a swamp adventure and let's head south, you know? And then you can do the whole, oh, there's like a small mountain here in the south as well. Let's go up the mountain so we can get a lay of the land. Or you can say, you know what? That's a detour. Let's just keep heading south. And that's a choice that you make, right? Immediately. Interesting choice. Or the main city is 3 hex away to the west. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I can't type to. It's okay. It's okay. Right. So yeah, something like that. There's a lot of good ideas to have. Okay. So things like search, hex, adventure sites. So this is the next point. And this is my biggest point of criticism with Barbarian Prince. That combined with the next point, getting lost equals losing a turn. So in Barbarian Prince, the only option you have is travel out of a hex, basically. Right? Like, there are a handful of sites of interest, towns and castles and temples and like ruins and such. A handful. But the vast majority of the hexes, like 99% of the hexes, are wilderness, right? And really, the only thing you can do in a wilderness hex is travel to another hex. And then, so that's not a choice, right? Traveling to another hex is not a choice. And then when you travel, you have a chance of getting lost. So it's basically you roll a die, and then the die will determine if you get to play the game this turn or not. Right? It's kind of like playing an old board game, and then you land on a field that says lose next turn. That just feels bad. And that's exactly what this is. Right? It's essentially you roll the dice and the dice say you don't get to play. Sucks to be you. Right? And I've also elaborated saying like the choice of which hex you want to enter, there are different chances of getting lost depending on the hex. It's like eh. Yeah, but you are not traveling randomly, right? You are traveling with certain goals in mind. You hate missing turns at any time. Yes. Missing turns is one of those old game design things that I am so glad is being phased out. It's bad design, yeah. Same with the prevalence of roll and move. That is also like in certain games, like the old board game Clue, all right, where you have to solve who did the murder in what room with what weapon and so on. You have roll and move in there because back then that was the standard board game paradigm, right? Roll and move. But roll and move in Clue is effectively losing a turn, right? Because the only interesting thing you're doing is I forgot what the game itself calls it, but like taking a guess or like making an assertion or something like that. You're saying, oh, okay, I'm in the library and Miss Scarlet murdered the host with the rope, right? But you can only do that if you're in the library. So any turn you spend moving from room to room is a turn that's lost, right? So I kind of get it because it means that different people can make these. It's not a full accusation. It's like an assertion, right? At different rates, and someone might make a bunch, and then you have to keep notes of what the other person rope the host. Dang. Right, and so on. But overall, it's like, eh. So yeah, and essentially, it's also bad because you don't have any choice. So it's not even, oh, if I try to travel to a different hex, I have a chance of losing my turn, versus if I do something else in the hex, something else meaningful in the hex, I don't have a chance of losing the turn. So now it becomes more of a choice. Still not a great choice, but something of a choice. And like, well, you're not given this other option in the game, right? Not for the vast majority of hexes. So it's really just roll to lose a turn, right? Um, and I was saying like different terrains have different chances of getting lost. Yeah, but at the same time, you are traveling to certain destinations, and then you will take the most efficient path through there. And if you want, you can calculate how long it will take you in average, how many turns. You can say, oh, if I travel 3 tiles through mountains with this chance of getting lost, or compared to traveling 7 tiles through countryside with this chance of getting lost, now I can put that into an equation, and now I can see which path is more efficient. That is not an interesting choice, right? So don't give the player choices that can be solved by an equation like this. So yeah, that's the biggest point. And also different encounters that you can have in the different terrains are already like different enough. The type of encounters you can have in a mountain versus the type of encounters you can have in a countryside already differentiate these two terrains, right? Getting lost is fine if it's interesting too. Yeah, so one way of getting lost is you veer off and end up in a different hex. That's interesting. You still make progress, but now you have to deal with like, oh, we're not where we wanted to be. You don't really lose a turn because you moved forward-ish, and you discover something new, right? You discover this hex, maybe. Another thing could be like, so here, veer, oops, off course is one option, or another thing could be if you get lost, you instead have a different encounter. Maybe you discover a hidden site, right, in the course of getting lost. Maybe you roll on the encounter die and get like a clue of, oh, there is something hidden here in this hex, or something interesting happens, right? Make getting lost interesting. Make hello? Make getting lost interesting. It's a bit squished, but I'd have a complication. Yeah, you're talking about, right? Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. Some sort of, it doesn't even have to be a bad thing, right? You are already losing time, you're losing provisions, you're whatever. If you're on a timeline, it's like, we have to reach this town in 3 days. Oh no, we just spent a whole, depending on how long travel takes, right? A whole watch or something just getting stuck in this hex. That feels bad already. But now you get something interesting. Oh, maybe you find an encounter and it's like, huh, actually, we just encountered something and that gives us something nice, right? More money or like a special magic item that's like, huh, we could use this now, right? Makes the rest of the travel a bit easier or whatever. Right? Uh, clear systems for various actions, right? Need to flesh out and add story and RP opportunities. Okay, I think that's already part of what I need. But things like delve, right? Dungeon delve, adventure site, exploration, combat, social, special travel, like crossing a river, fording a river, and such, right? Okay, this is getting messy. Yeah, lots of inspiration for level design. So there's the encounter tables, encounters, emergent storytelling, different settlements, etc. And then ideas for system design as well. Okay, now, like I said, core gameplay loop is the Hexcrawl, and the loop of the Hexcrawl. Let me get this in this color here. The loop of the Hexcrawl is decide action for, I'm gonna call it a turn for now, right? Um, and then what do? Perform action, right? Check consequences, random encounter rules, eating food, etc. And then reset, right? And then there's a larger meta turn, which is like every day you have to rest a certain amount, you have to eat. Hey, Vitalina, 2! This is not 2, but something like it, I guess, maybe. Oh, hi, Vitalina. How was your weekend? Um, right. Okay. So this is what we have now. Right. So what do? We start designing. I've been thinking what like things like hex size and travel rates and things like that. And hex size is relatively arbitrary, right? Hex size is kind of sort of arbitrary. Um, but first off, before I can put down systems, I need to have a rough idea of the setting, right? Again, because I do believe that generic rules divorced from any kind of setting or theme or story or so can only get you this far, and it's better to have a rough idea of what kind of stories or what kind of world you have to better tailor the systems toward that. Music is almost gone again. Okay. Right. So the system I want to have, or not, this is the setting, rough setting slash themes. Right, because like a hex crawl through something like, I don't know, D&D's Eberron is going to be very, very different than through something like Lord of the Rings, right? Lord of the Rings is dark-ish fantasy. Like the world is very low population, very few settlements here and there, over like looming evil everywhere. Whereas Eberron is more like, oh, it's almost diesel punky, lots of settlements, lots of fast transportation, a lot of things are completely mapped out and so on. Um, or heck, even something like Dark Sun, right? Dark Sun is even more, it's post-apocalyptic fantasy and very, very different ideas of what that will look like. So, rough setting themes or games I want to be able to play this in. So I'm gonna go with something like sparse world, right? So something along the lines of darker fantasy, travel, exploration is dangerous, which is why not a lot of people do it. Things that you can find are weird, right? So weird encounters, right? Just go wild. Not maybe not Gonzo wild of the old D&D versions. Well, who knows? Maybe, right? It's not off the table. But like definitely weird and strange things that you can encounter out there. Um and what else? Uh that actually already tells us quite a bit. Right? So some sources of inspiration might be, for example, I'm now thinking like Diablo. Diablo 2, for example. Has there been other civilizations that have fallen? Could be. That is not necessary, right? That could be a thing out there. But like that's that is more reflected in maybe you find an old road in a forest that no one has been to in 100 years, right? Maybe you find an old city. It does inform what you might find. Yes, definitely, it informs what you might find. But at that point, that is level design, right? And like that influences entries on the encounter table, essentially, right? Um, so that's details, and definitely it's a possible thing. So like Numenera, especially, what do they call it? I forgot. Like the non-civilized, no, or not non-civilized, the non, like there is one portion of the Numenera main Numenera setting that is like has quite a few towns and cities and such, and the one that is basically wilderness with a bunch of small villages randomly scattered about that don't know of each other, right? That, and I'm talking about that, the beyond, it's what it's called. Um, right. What else? So Diablo 2 still has set cities, kinda, right? And you could have that as well. You could have towns that are fortified, and while you're close to town, it's relatively safe. But also that's not where you need to be, right? You need to go out for whatever, right? Um, so for now, okay, let's just have this. What else? Um, Magic is always an important aspect, magic and technology. So things like low power level, right? So characters can become relatively powerful. They can advance, but they don't become D&D demigods, right? So no D&D demigods. They become capable, right? They might find nice items and equipment that gives them some nice stuff, but uh no, yeah, no, like, oh, I can wade into 1,000 goblins and survive. Also, first or second edition characters for D&D. Yeah, closer to that. um, let's leave it no safe magic. Let's have that, right? So magic is unpredictable or high cost or high risk or something like that, right? So magic can exist, but it's not magic as technology, right? That a lot of D&D worlds actually go into, right? Sure, you might have some things that are doable. You might have simple spells or simple rituals here and there that you can rely on, but overall magic is wild and unpredictable or really really expensive. So a city might have magic. Big power, big cost? Yeah, potentially. Or maybe even little power, big cost. It's all relative, right? Um in D&D, a fireball is very, very mundane. It's quote unquote only a third level spell. So a lot of people are like, eh, I can throw 3 of these per day. Eh, I don't care too much. But maybe even like a firebolt or something could be really powerful in this world. It's all relative, right? So it's relative to other magic available, but it's also relative to the tools overall that are available. And sometimes, yeah, no, you definitely want that firebolt when you're out in the wilderness and are down to your last bits of equipment and last bits of food or no food and so on. The 5th level cast is really uncommon according to most settings. Yes, but player characters, they can get to relatively high levels relatively easily. And then suddenly you're like, I am the most powerful mage in the entire world. And I am level 6. Or something like that. Um, it's very different power levels. Um, which is why I'm saying, right, D&D characters eventually become demigods, and they don't become demigods at level 20. Depending on what the setting is tuned to, they might become demigods at level like 8 or 10, right? Heck, starting at about level 10 or 12, gameplay breaks down because player characters are so powerful. Elf nonsense? Yes, elf nonsense. We're talking about elf game. However, there's an ad that's about to hit any moment now. So I will not continue talking about or writing up some things. Instead I'll just chill for now. Actually, let me get up and stretch. Ah. Okay. Oh my god. I don't know if that came through, but that was my spine. Oof. What's the temperature today? Holy heck. Hold on, let me check real quick. It's unbearably hot today. It's 30 degrees.
Endure. In enduring, grow strong.
79% humidity. Hooray. Yeah, that's typically how summer here goes. We always get something like 80, 90, 100% humidity and then 30 plus degrees. So that's amazing. Love it. I don't actually love it. Uh it's hitting 30 for a bit here, but we have low humidity. Yeah, it really is the humidity. Um uh so it's when I was in Japan, waking up to it already being 30 at like 7 a.m. and having the humidity was really brutal. Yeah. Summers here are deadly. And it gets up to sometimes it gets up to 40 degrees here. Um because global warming, hooray. Like 36, 37 used to be extreme even here. And now it's not uncommon to hit 40 something in like August or September. It's just bleh. At the very least, like everything here is built for the heat, right? So like the houses are built for the heat. Everything is tiled and cool. Usually we have air conditioning, so we can turn that on if it becomes too hot. Um, and such. So it is bearable, like, but it's just uncomfortable. Okay, hold on. Are ads over? Almost. Okay. Hold on. Look, I'm just posting up something real quick. Uh, okay. All right. So where were we? We were doing. All right. The setting. Yeah. Risky magic. Right. Risky magic. Or just uh uncommon magic. So I don't want to use the terms high magic, low magic, because those are like there's so many different um interpretations or definitions of what actually counts as high magic or what actually counts as low magic, and etc etc, and so I don't want to use those labels. I'm just going to say magic is uncommon, and it's uncommon because of these factors. Some of these, all of these, whatever, right? So it's unpredictable, or it's high cost, or high risk, or whatever. Or maybe I don't know if I want to go with people who can use it are rare. That is another way of making magic rare, obviously. But I kind of want to make it so that players can try to learn magic or use magic with their characters, right? If they want to, right? Use every tool at your disposal, etc. And if they want to dip their toe into using it, I don't want to restrict them and saying, but you did not declare that your character has like Jedi blood or something right from the start. You can't. I don't want to do that. I should probably write that down. Uh, Magic use is not something like genetically restricted. Right? So anyone can try to learn it if they want. And it's not necessarily the best choice because of other things inherent in using it. Now, obviously, the more training you have, the safer it might become. But, you know, that's true for a lot of different things. Can try to learn and use it. Okay. And especially that also means no magic for convenient travel or things like, oh, I just used this, what is it, second level cleric spell, create food and water. Yay, we will never have to worry about provisions ever again. Things like that. Mm. So, yeah. Is there anything else? Sells all food and makes hundreds of gold. Exactly. Like if you actually think about it with like the magic uses that are around, um there shouldn't, like, the world should not look, a D&D world should not look like anything like medieval Europe. It shouldn't look anything like it, right? Because you have relatively easy to use and easy to access things like basic health, right? Curing poisons and diseases with create food and water. Certain towns might employ druids that can control the weather, for example. Yeah, healing spells. You can have courts that use Zone of Truth, right? You have like warfare will look completely different. You will not have the whole soldiers marching in tight formations if all it takes is one battle mage throwing a fireball into that, right? No, you will have more modern, spread out, platoon sized foxhole warfare with because you cannot risk even a single fireball or a single lightning bolt going through and frying your entire battalion because you marched in rank and file, right? It's like, or heck, like castles will be built completely differently because people can ride in using griffins. How do you defend against flying enemies? Well, not with traditional European style castle or any castles really, right? Heck, a Japanese castle might still be better than that. Um, and so on and so forth, right? So the a D&D world should look completely different. Um, and that is a lack of thinking things down to the end, a lack of deconstruction. And it creates a lot of disconnect. Like this is why it's like it really feels like the setting and story and the mechanics of D&D are two completely different things because they're telling me two completely different stories. Right? The setting tells me this one thing, and the game mechanics tell me a completely different story, and it's I've been talking about this. It happens out in Baldur's Gate 2 and such as well. It's like, oh, if someone dies, especially if it's like a higher ranking person or like a rich person, so it's like, oh no, this is a huge tragedy. This person's been murdered. This is gonna like they're gone forever. Blah blah blah. It's like, buddy, there's like 2 dozen priests in this city alone who can raise dead. You have the money to pay for it. Just get over it, right? We have resurrection spells, exactly. Right? Just if you're cheap, just buy the cheapest option and then let the person sleep it off for a week, whatever. Right? You can summon creatures to guard them. You can craft. Heck, if you really want to save someone for a while and be like, yeah, people are trying to assassinate you, we will imprison you using the imprisonment spell, right? Set you into a tiny globe prison miles beneath the earth. Just stay there for like a week or two while we take care of the problem of the assassins, and then once we're done with the problem, we'll just get you back done. Right? It's the safest safe house anywhere. Um, yeah, like we have contingency, the spell exactly. Right? Just use a scroll of contingency. It's like, okay, I will cast this on you, and you immediately get things like stone skin and magic reflection and blah done. Yeah. It should like the types of stories you can tell or you should tell are also completely different, which is why every time someone like they use like, oh no, this person's been murdered, we gotta avenge, blah blah blah, it always rings very very hollow because the mechanics tell me a completely different story. um it's like parallel realities. Okay, where were we? i think I think this is okay for now. for rough setting themes. One thing I want to add here, which is towns, villages, etc. are spread out more, meaning generally villages, farming villages and such, are spread out that they're like 1 or 2 hours between each village, and about 1 or 2 hours between a village and the nearest town, right? Um, in a populated area. So that's like that gives enough land to farm for each village. That makes sure that the villagers, the farmers, can go to town to sell their goods and buy things they need within a day, right? That's why you have a farmers market every week or so. That's like the farmers can go, all right, in the morning, I'll go to town. It takes me an hour, right? And then in the evening, I can come back, right? And so on. And trading is probably dangerous. Not as much as in populated areas. Yeah. Trading is gonna be dangerous as well. Travel, exploration, trade is dangerous. I can add that. Right. Um, and that also means news doesn't travel as fast. And etc. etc. And you could have, so if you have something like a hex map with 3 mile hexes, you would have a town in every hex, basically. And I have tried this. I have overlaid 3 mile hex maps onto populated areas, and it really was. Oh yeah, there is a farming town. By now, they're no longer just farming towns, right? And many, like Germany, for example, they're now actual towns. But you can see, oh yeah, there's one in every single hex, um, which is interesting to see. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, so the interesting feature in every hex is just the town, nothing else. Done, and that makes exploration boring again. Um, so we're gonna do some basics of the Hexcrawl system. A low-level mission might be to protect a farmer going to the market, something like that, yeah. Or heck, a messenger going to a town or something, right? Could have that. All right, so some basics of the system. Yeah, you don't want everywhere to be populated, definitely. I've been thinking a lot about what size hexes to use. The basics, like the exact size is whatever, right? No one's really gonna, especially since we're doing, okay, let's start out with hex as container. If we're doing hex as containers, the exact size is not as important because we're not using it to really measure distances. We're just saying you travel hex by hex, that's it. And the actions you can take in a hex are just inside the hex. Done, right? Um, but I do want, and I've been thinking about this. I want time to be measured in watches. So time is measured in 4-hour watches. Why? It gives symmetry in a certain sense. So typically, when you have a dungeon delve, right, with a dungeon delve system, you run 10-minute turns, right? So you run dungeon turns, which means it takes about 10 minutes to properly search a room. It takes about 10 minutes to have an encounter, combat, social, whatever. It takes about 10 minutes to travel a certain amount of distance in a dungeon, right? While being on the lookout for monsters and traps and such. So that's not a bad time span of length. Is every turn gonna be exactly 10 minutes? Does it matter? No. Just like how every watch is gonna be exactly 4 hours, or it's gonna be 3.5, and the next one is 4.5. Doesn't matter, right? But roughly 4 hour watches. Why this length? So when you look at various Hexcrawl games, they use watches in all sorts of lengths. Some do like whole day is one turn. Barbarian Prince does that. Some use 12 hours, 8 hours, 6 hours, whatever. I like 4 hours because then that means you have four watches per day, just like how you have 4 watches per day, 6 watches per day. Apologies, 6 watches per day, just as you have 6 turns per hour in the dungeon, right? So I like that symmetry. Um, might be able to do something with it using a d6, right? If you're going to be like, oh, on which watch is something going to happen in this day, you just roll a d6, done. Um, and so on and so forth. So 4 hour watches. And also, I've been thinking the other way of counting time is in hours, right? So 3 mile hexes, why people use 3 mile hexes is again, you have the league. A person traveling on foot in an hour is going to travel roughly 3 miles, 5 kilometers, which is a league. That's where the term comes from. And so you can have these 5 kilometer hexes, 3 mile hexes, and have like, oh, every travel from hex to hex is an hour, and we could just use that and it matches up. It's nice. But then I was thinking, wait, then that means I have to track 24 hours per day. That's a lot. That's quite a bit. And I don't have to track 24 because at some point the characters have to rest and such. But still, that's quite a bit. I'm like, do I want to track that much? No, that becomes very tedious. It's just like how we don't track every minute of an hour, or heck, every 2 minutes of an hour or something. We track them in 10-minute turns to chunk it. I don't want the hour to be the shortest unit because that seems like too fine. Everyone I played was 1 hex per day, but I was never married to that. Yeah, 1 hex per day team seems too big. And then you would need something like 18 mile or 24 mile, which is like 30, 40 kilometers hexes, which is massive. Like that's an entire county, essentially. Heck, that is more or less how counties were defined, right? This is how far can my soldiers travel in a day? That's my sphere of influence. And that's my county. So that's essentially you travel from county to county uh in like in these hexes. That seems too much. That seems way too much. So the 4 hour watch is, I think, a good medium ground. Um, so and that allows me to chunk it very nicely, right? I can say, all right, so you can travel 2 watches per day, no problem. You have to rest 2 watches per day, and then you have 2 watches per day of downtime, where you set up camp, cook food. You can hunt and forage during that time. You can train skills. You can converse. Blah 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 blah. There's a lot of downtime actions you can do, and so on and so forth, right? So let me just write that down real quick. So normal is 2 travel, 2 rest, and then 2 downtime, right? And it's also very easy to kind of realize when characters are doing things like pushing themselves. If they only get 1 watch of rest, then you can say, all right, you got some rest. So like you don't get the full benefits for it, but like maybe you don't recover any, I don't know, stamina or whatever it is, but you also are not exhausted, right? For now. Whereas if you go, okay, you rested for 7 hours instead of 8. What does that do? Does that mean you get 7/8 of the benefits of sleep? It's like, huh? Or you can say, okay, you can travel 2 watches, no problem. If you force march and push yourself, you can travel a 3rd watch, but then you become exhausted. And then it's like, yeah, you can travel 8 hours, but if you travel 9 hours, does that make a difference? What if you travel 10? Where's the line, right? And things like that. And where? How do I measure that? What do I do? I feel like the systems are going to become too fiddly. at that point. More fiddly that I am willing to deal with. There's already enough to deal with in a Hexcrawl. We saw that during the Barbarian Prince thing. There was a lot of rolls happening, a lot of things that I had to pay attention to. That paying attention to these things is like, oh, if you force march 1 hour versus 2 hours, I really don't want to deal with the difference. I really don't want to go into that much detail. If you force march, you travel an additional watch, you make more ground, you cover more ground, but then, you just get exhaustion. Blah, done. Right? And so on and so forth. So I feel like that is the right level of chunking that I want. Now that means hex size is going to be somewhere around 10 kilometers ish, which is 6 miles. I can imagine it being slightly smaller, maybe like 8 kilometers, 5 miles. What does that mean though? So if we have a hex over here, right? Then this is the distance we are measuring, right? From flat side to flat side. Right? This is the size of a hex. It's strangely not the actual side of a hex. It's this. And we determined a 5-kilometer hex has an area of roughly 21.5 kilometers squared. And a 6-mile hex or a 10-kilometer hex is going to have an area 4 times as large, right? The square cube law applies. If you double distances, you quadruple the area because you have a square in there, right? So a 10-kilometer hex is going to have an area of roughly 85-ish square kilometers. Wow. Hi, Catalina. How are you? Which is very, very big. Which is very big. You could have a sprawling city in that area and still have space to spare, right? Which is why I might want to make it a bit smaller. A bit smaller also means, it gives a bit more of this claustrophobic system feeling, right? And it also means like it makes it slightly more manageable. But really, what that puts us is hex contents, right? So each hex has several features. At least one is a landmark, right? So every single hex has a landmark feature. It could be a big tree. It could be a town. It could be a waterfall. It could be a temple. Ruins, right? It could be whatever, a magical anomaly happening there, a floating island somewhere. Whatever. But each hex has one landmark feature and at least several features, right? Some people say you roll how many each has, which is a nice idea. You just have to determine the range. I don't know, 1 to 4, 2 to 5, 3 to 6, whatever, right? Something along those lines. You could have like 1d3 plus 1 or something, right? Features, or 2d6 divided by 2, whatever floats your boat, right? Something along those lines. And some of those might be hidden. You can either roll them and then prepare everything, or have tables for that, and some features might be hidden, and then you can search the hex to find these hidden features, etc. But essentially, the idea is, right, if it takes us about 1 hour to travel 5 kilometers. And this length through here is 10 kilometers, or heck, 8 kilometers if we do this, right? 8 kilometers. Then traveling through here should take us slightly less than 2 hours. But a watch is 4 hours. So what are we doing the rest? What are we doing the other 2 hours? We're exploring the hex. We're going through. We're not just traveling from the edge, boom, to the center. That's it. What we're actually doing is we're kind of sort of meandering around, finding our way, etc., and then coming to somewhere here. But in this course of the 4 hours, we have discovered certain things in the hex, right? We have like, oh, there's a thing here, there's a thing here. All right, we've discovered the 2 landmark features that the hex has, or we've discovered something, right? Is it reasonable for a party of adventurers to survey a hex in 4 hours like this? I don't know. I don't care. People can make detailed calculations of, oh yeah, actual search and rescue strategies and how much area you can cover in how much time with a team of trained professionals, etc., etc. People have made these calculations in regards to hex crawling. They are available online, and they have said, oh yeah, hexes are way too big, you cannot actually discover everything, or whatever. I forget. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Could tie it to an ability, or you could just say they did it. Yeah, there's various things you can do here. You can say, oh, someone, like, you can have a whole branch of exploration abilities, right? It's like if you enter a hex, you automatically discover one of the hidden features in it. That could be an ability, or, something along those lines. I don't want special abilities to just be, oh, you get +1 on this roll, or you get +1 on that roll. But having like, oh, you don't just discover the landmark feature, you also discover one of the hidden features automatically in the course of traveling in the hex. Cool, right? There could be exploration abilities in regards to like getting lost, for example. Or whatever. There could be so much. Oh, could have fun to have a favorite terrain. Yeah, things like that. You get a free hidden feature on your hex. Yes, right. You can make it more specialized, definitely, right? And then that's like, oh yeah, we have a ranger who's specialized in forests. That means we like to travel through forests, and that is another choice, right? That helps you in making choices, which is really cool. It's like, okay, this path is like 2 hexes longer, but it leads all through forest, and we have a ranger who likes being there, so let's go through there instead, right? And so on and so forth. Because we can discover more things and maybe find what we're looking for or whatever. There's a lot of cool things there. So okay, let me cross this out. Let's actually go with 8 kilometers / 5 miles, right? Okay. And that would also mean if I do have a populated area, having 1 town per hex, which is already pretty dense, would still mean there's about 2 hours in between each town, which already spreads things out a bit more, right? Or villages, essentially. But I could have a village. I could feasibly have a village in 1 hex and another village like 3 or 4 hexes down, which is a day or 2 of travel, which is a bit far, but not unreasonably far, right? So that is definitely something I can play with here. What else? Yeah, the rest is already like you can have oh, seeing what is in other hexes. So with a hex this size, the thing with the 3 mile hex is, or a 5 kilometer hex is, you have, so the horizon on a planet the size of Earth is about 5 kilometers away, right? If you're standing on flat ground at roughly person height, right? So that means if you are in this hex, for example, and if these were 5 kilometer hexes, the horizon is roughly here ish. Roughly. Which means if you're in this hex and you have a clear view, you can look into all of these hexes, right? You can see what's in the center of these hexes. And if you move to the edge of your hex, you can see the entire neighboring hex of that edge, right? The entire thing. Which can be good. It definitely helps with making choices, but on the other hand, I'm afraid of something like information overload. I've also been thinking, right? Barbarian Prince, again, choices only make sense if you know what your choice is, right? If you say, oh, do I go to the hex to the south or do I go to the hex to the southeast? Well, if they're both invisible, so to speak, and you only find out what terrain is in them, what's in them by traveling into them, that's not much of a choice, right? And I've been thinking about things like civilization when you're scouting and such. You can always see the terrain around you, so you make choices on where you want to go based on that terrain, right? Um, that said, with a hex size of 8 kilometers, you can still see a little bit. So the horizon, if you're in the center, I'm out of colors. If you're in the center, the horizon is going to be, if this is like 2.5 kilometers, and the horizon is going to be roughly here. Right? What am I talking about? 4 kilometers? Yeah, ish, whatever. Roughly. So that means you can kind of sort of look into the other hexes. And like I said, traveling a hex doesn't just mean straight to the center. It means you meander about a bit. So you can kind of see. So what info do you get? Info about surrounding hexes. Is you get what terrain is in there. Not the color I wanted. That's relatively easy. You should be able to tell the tile type at least. Yes, exactly. You can tell the terrain, right? Is it a forest? Is it hills? Is it a swamp? Right? You can tell that. And tall landmarks. Because if something is tall, you can see it even if it's beyond the horizon. Like all of you have probably encountered this yourself. Like one way to see farther is to be tall yourself, go up a tower or something, or one way to be seen is be tall, right? So if you are somewhere mountain, tower, cities, exactly, a smokestack, right? Anything like that. Heck, it could even be a temple on a hill. Like you don't have to, the way the math works out, you don't have to be super high up. A lighthouse, exactly. You don't need to be super high up for the horizon to extend massively. It's an exponential equation, right? The lighthouse equation, the horizon equation is exponential, inversely exponential, which means if you're flat on the ground and you rise from flat on the ground, then your horizon is basically 0. And then if you go from that to 1 meter, then your horizon goes like to several kilometers already. From 0, boom, to several kilometers. If you then go to about 2 meters, your horizon is about 6 kilometers. You go from about, I don't know, 4.5 kilometers to 6. Right? If you go up another 2 meters, your horizon goes out by another 2 kilometers or so. It's only once you get into the height of airplanes and spaceships and such that the increases become tiny. But going from standing on flat ground to climbing up a tree that is 3 or 4 meters tall, your horizon expands massively. I learned so much about this when I watched the documentary In Search of a Flat Earth. Yeah. It really is amazing just how the math works out, right? Which is why, like, that could be one of the actions you take, right? You could be find somewhere tall, climb up there, and then survey the surrounding hexes. And like I said, even a let me check, what is the horizon? There's a Wikipedia article on this that has all the formulas in there. Horizon, no, not the game. God damn it, Horizon. It's not. I don't want Horizon. There we go. So the distance is roughly on a Earth planet, perfectly spherical Earth planet, blah blah blah. You know, perfect math. 2HR, where H is the Earth radius, R is the H radius. So this expression can be simplified as. Here it is, very very quickly. This is a nerd channel, so we're doing some nerd math. Distance is roughly equal to k root h, and this, because it's a root, that's what makes it inversely exponential. Or right, so k is k equals 3.57 kilometers per meter, root of meter. Right? Which means the kilometers is how far, like the kilometers is essentially the distance, and then the meters is, let me see, for an observer standing on the ground with h equals 1.7 meters, right? So roughly human height. Where is the, what is the root of the meter come from? Mounted hex, you might be able to see 2 hexes. Oh, way more. Way more. So there are some examples here in the Wikipedia article, right? So if you're standing at about 1.7 meters height, so roughly human, 1.7 meters, right? Then your horizon is 4.7 kilometers away, right? Which is the 5 kilometers we were talking about. If you are 2 meters tall, then your horizon is the full 5 kilometers, right? If you are on a hill of 30 meters, which isn't too high, right? Check this. Your horizon, guess how much? Guess how much? So if you are 1.7 meters tall, your horizon is 4.7 meters. I mean, for balance, yeah, fair. And at some point, you can only guess the distances, right? You're not filling out all the hexes. You're saying in that direction, somewhere in the distance, I can see a temple, maybe, right? But you cannot place it in an exact hex. 15 kilometers, not bad. 19.6 kilometers, roughly 20, right? which means if you're on a hill that's 30 meters tall, you can see, if it's in the center of a hex, 4, then another 8, and then another 8. So yeah, you can see 2 hexes away just from a hill or a tall or a tower or something that's 30 meters, right? Standing on, for an observer atop Mount Everest, the horizon is a distance of 336 kilometers. That is wild. But again, you can probably not see very well, right? So it balances out by, if you are really high up, yay! If you're really high up, sure, you can see a lot, and you might see, the edge of the forest is there. Oh, I see a river glittering there in the distance, right? I think I see a town over in the north, etc., etc. But you can't place it on the hex map, right? Because you don't know where it is precisely. You can only kind of say that direction is town, that direction some distance away is a river, that direction some distance away is this and that edge of the forest, but you know what direction exactly. So, right? Which is cool, which is very useful, exactly. So, so I'm going to rule that you can see maybe not even tall landmarks, maybe just the landmarks, right? Because traveling through a hex might include, again, we have a lot of time here, 4 hours, might include finding a bit of a higher ground to orient yourself. And that just means you can see the terrain and you can see whatever landmarks are in the terrain, in the hexes next to you. So you can see, there's a town over here in this hex. Okay, so now you know town, right? Or you can see temple, whatever. You might not realize it's a ruined temple. You might not know what temple it is, but you can see something over there, and so on and so forth. And that gives you choices, and you don't need 5-kilometer hexes. You can do it with hexes that are slightly bigger. Okay, so that's good. And then of course, events and encounters. And also, very important, exhaustion that sticks. This is an important one. Because what I don't want happening is characters travel, right? And then it's like, oh, if you force march, you gain a level of exhaustion. Da, da, da. And then they force march, right? Travel 3 hexes. And then they're like, we're now going to get a full night's sleep. And it's like, oh, if you get a full night's sleep, you recover all of your exhaustion. Well, that didn't do much, right? So that, I don't want that. There are other games that handle this in different ways. Lord of the One Ring, right? The Lord of the Rings game is essentially you travel and you build up exhaustion as you travel, and then once you finish your travel, that's when all the exhaustion hits, and then wherever you were, you have to deal with the exhaustion. So if you're traveling to an adventure site or something, then you get there exhausted.
Updated my journal.
Oh, thank you for the follow. Cyrus1231, welcome. Nice to have you here. How are you doing? I hope you had a good weekend. Yeah, we're doing some game design, some hexcrawly. I'm scared in my D&D campaign. Oh no, what's happening? Is something bad happening? Where was I? Oh yeah, but that also means the One Ring basically says if you're traveling from an adventure site back to town, don't bother with the travel rules because you'll be back in town anyway where you can rest. And then you you can just sleep off all of your exhaustion anyway, right? I'd have 1 exhaustion, 2 watch of rest to clear. Yeah, that could be a thing. where you don't recover all exhaustion, you only recover one, and then you have to try and balance. But that could still be, as long as we don't do anything other than force march once and don't run into anything, we can still just do that. I am down and I am the healer. The boss is at 40% HP and the heaviest hitter is at 5% HP, and the only other person who could heal is at 25%. Now the other side of the map. Oh no, that feels like that could be a TPK incoming. Uh-oh. Wait, are you playing right this very moment? Is that happening live? Um, no, not right now. Oh, okay. But yeah, that does certainly feel like a tough situation. Um, so I guess we still have one player now. That is a rough spot. That really is a rough spot. Yeah, I mean, but that's the nature of boss fights and dangerous combat, right? About 2 seconds most heaviest hitters, and out 2 second most heaviest hitters at 75% HP. Oh, our 2 second most heaviest hitters. Wait, that sounds like a big party as well. Dang. Um, but yeah, that sounds like a tough fight, definitely. I have to say though, I don't know enough about D&D mechanics and D&D combat and such to to appreciate the depth, I guess. Yeah, to be honest, the thing I'm most scared is I am on a boat and the boss slices it in half and I'm devil fruit user. Oh, you're playing a One Piece campaign? Ooh, oh, that's interesting. Okay, okay. I guess that depends on how merciful the GM is then. If they intentionally make the boss target your boat or not. Um, so yeah, but that's gonna make it extra frantic, right? If you do fall into the water, then other people have to go, oh no, now we have to save this person, and so on. So yeah, I can totally see that. One more problem? Oh no, even more? If they are smart and the enemy wants to win, that is something they will do. Well, yeah. Our whole crew is still fruit users. That feels like a lack of contingency right there. Or yeah. Oof. Well, I guess then the only thing I can say is good luck. Only non-devil fruit user is an old grandma. Uh-oh. Yeah, then definitely good luck, I guess. Um Jumping in after you might be an issue. Yep. Um Hold on, I was looking up at the horizon thing again. Uh the 125 HP, the Logia, you have the ink fruit. I don't know enough about One Piece as well to know what those do, to be fair. Oh, hello, Edwin Sue. Welcome. Maybe something like if you're exhausted one and you rest, you become fatigued one. If you're fatigued one and do anything that would give you a level of exhaustion, you immediately go to exhaustion level 2. Yeah, okay. Um I can see where that is coming from. Right now, currently that feels relatively fiddly, if that makes sense. Logia is very control become ink. Ah, okay. Immune to all bludgeoning, piercing, slashing attacks that don't have haki. Okay. Again, I'm not too sure what that means, but okay, that sounds pretty powerful. Um, so that would mean having to track things like exhaustion and fatigue separately, and then you can have like I get that you would the fatigue would be like soft exhaustion that can go right back, um, and that is definitely an option. Currently, that feels a bit fiddly. Um, if you know what I mean. Like, no offense, or like, what am I saying? No offense. Like, I mean, yeah, no. Any idea is welcome. I'm just trying to think of play situations, right? It's like, do I want to track multiple? Because I'm also thinking I'm tracking things like maybe some sort of hit points. Maybe I'm tracking injuries, and I'm already tracking provisions and maybe torches and time and so on. Like, if exhaustion and fatigue were the only two things I'm tracking, yeah, sure, not a problem. I'm just now thinking, and I didn't mention this. I realized, right? I didn't mention this, but there will be a lot of things to track, and at some point, tracking more and more things is it might be overwhelming. Yeah, one of the 75 HP dudes can turn into a big bad wolf. C pop. Oh, something went wrong there. Uh-oh. You have a huff and puff ability that does 5 to 6 cold and 5 to 6 bludgeoning. Oh, dang. 60-foot range breath weapon. That sounds really powerful. Use it, he need to roll d6 and allow 5 or 6 will get his breath weapon again. Ah, okay. That sounds... Now that I think about it, Cypher system. Suddenly I'm reminded of the Cypher system. Yeah, hopefully they can take out the boss before he falls in the water. Definitely. But all of a sudden, I'm reminded of the Cypher system, where you could have the devil fruit power be the focus that your character has. Um, yeah, that's something. A good use of the Cypher system. All right, so the other dude was 7.5 control, all gold in a 60-foot range. And make golden clones and hammers, or just cast 6 magic missiles for free. Dang. That does sound this okay, all of it sounds OP, but if everything is OP, nothing is, I guess. Let me look at how some other games have dealt with the exhaustion issue. So there is one game that I'm looking at right now is Cairn, which is an OSR game that does a lot of good things. Let me check real quick. Ability deprivation and fatigue. Healing. Combat. Oh, where does it say how you heal fatigue? Recuperate safely for a full night. Hold on. Lasts until they can recover in safety. Hmm. This doesn't say anything about... Okay, so I'm guessing... Oh, be getting that time. Okay, thank you for hanging out, Awkward Pain. And have a good night. Sleep well. Thank you for being here. Sorry, I missed a couple of messages. It also depends on how you do character sheets. Yes, definitely. For example, if you use boxes to track fatigue and exhaustion, then the fatigue would be a single slash through the box and exhaustion would cross through one of the boxes. That is definitely a possibility. Yeah, that would be one way of doing it. Right now, the idea is I don't even know how I'm tracking exhaustion yet. I don't even know. I don't know if you get like a 1, 2, 3, 4 exhaustion or something, or if it's just a state that you are in, right? Binary. Or so I don't know yet. That's what we're trying to figure out. So the guy with 100% HP can make small ghosts that if passed through you, then you must make a wisdom saving throw DC 14, or you become depressed, not being able to use your reaction bonus action. Oh, there's some ads happening. So yeah, sorry about that. Ads, I'm not gonna keep designing for now. I'll wait out the ad. So I need to keep an eye on the time. Can go for a little bit longer. Once you succeed, this ability can't affect you for the next 24 hours. Last dude with 100% HP can dismantle, reassemble anything made out of wood or metal. I don't get ads? Okay. Yeah, those sound like some pretty powerful abilities, definitely. Especially in a D&D setting. Oh, hey, congrats on getting first, Cyrus. Nice. All right. I don't have too much time left. I started a bit later today because we had to prepare some things, and I have a class later on today that I have to teach. So I have maybe another half hour in me. First one to redeem first. Yes, you are. No one has done so this stream. So yeah, congrats. Yeah. So we're not going to finish designing this system this stream. I didn't expect to. Also, my fruit is powerful, but I didn't get to use it. Oh no! That sucks. That really sucks. Having a cool ability, but not getting to use the cool ability is... I can steal people's shadows. Oh! That sounds very versatile. Definitely. Yeah. But right now, just waiting on the ad. Um... And we're gonna be back to a regularly scheduled programming soon. Okay. When I steal their shadows, they take 20 radiant damage, have disadvantage on attacks and ability checks. That's a lot. Dang. When in the sun. Holy heck. Okay, ads are over now. welcome back, everyone. Thanks for sticking around for that. Yeah. So, like I said, I have maybe another. Okay, by now it's more like 20 minutes in me before I have to finish up and get ready for work later in the day. So yeah, we're not gonna finish designing this. It was never the goal, finishing this. Um, we're just trying to see what I learned from playing a Hexcrawl myself and see what we can use. And using these shadows, I can put them into objects or dead people, making them animated. Ooh, that's really cool. And seems like it can be overpowered as well. But then again, everything in that game that you have described so far seems pretty overpowered, which can be cool. All right, so like I said, I don't know how I'm tracking exhaustion yet. I haven't yet thought about that at all. So the current system that I have is it has inventory slots for items and such, and I have so far been tracking injuries in these item slots, right? So if you take an injury, then that occupies one of your item slots. Other games I've seen put exhaustion into theirs. So I think this is based on a whole family of OSR games called Into the Odd. For Into the Odd, so there's an OSR game, old school Renaissance game, um, that that's called Into the Odd, and that started this basic rule set, and that was then taken for other games, including games like Mausritter and Cairn and a bunch of others. Um, and they have a lot of good ideas, but I don't like one of the basic things in that system. And that is how lasting injury is tracked. So in that system, how that works is you have item slots and you have 3 stats: strength, dex, and willpower, and so on. And when you get exhaustion of any kind or some other condition, it occupies one inventory slot. And that means you can carry less things, right? Pretty obvious. Um, and how injury is tracked is it lowers your strength stat. So when you're in combat and you take damage, it first depletes your HP, and when your HP is gone, any further damage that you take after that directly reduces your strength value, your strength stat. And I don't like that system. Um, I don't like it because it feels like it makes the strength stat disproportionately important. It doesn't like damage from combat or damage from other sources really doesn't deplete your dex stat or your willpower stat. It only depletes your strength stat. And it really feels like, well, if strength is effectively my HP, I want to get as much of it as possible, and the other two are less important. And that immediately skews the entire system, and I I personally don't like something like that. Um and currently my system doesn't even have stats. So that goes straight out. So the way I've been tracking injury is whenever you take an injury from an attack, it fills up one of your inventory slots, and the only way to heal injury normally is if you go to a safe place like a town and rest. Right? So camping outside in the wilderness doesn't count. Sure, you can recover your stamina and such that way. Um, but other than that, it doesn't recover injuries. So as you adventure, your inventory is likely to fill up more and more with injuries, and then that's the attrition, right? That you get from adventuring outside, and then it forces you to return to a town at some point or other safe haven, and then to rest there for, I don't know, a week or two or something, right? To recover all of your injuries. Um, and I don't have a clear way to track exhaustion yet. Um, Games like Cairn and such, they have exhaustion fill up your inventory slots. And the way it's phrased, it is not 100% clear from my reading just now, but the way it's phrased feels like you have to rest in a safe place. So again, camping out in the wilderness doesn't seem to count. But you have to rest in a safe place in order to recover all of your exhaustion, right? Clear all of your inventory spaces. So effectively, the same thing happens, but exhaustion has the role of injuries in this sense. Um, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. Um, I honestly don't know yet, and it's also like if you can only recover exhaustion by resting in a safe place. Okay, very good. That means um I just lost my train of thought. That means exhaustion literally sticks to you, right? You while you're out adventuring, any exhaustion that you accrue, it sticks to you. No chance to get rid of it unless you stop or interrupt your adventuring and go to a town. Um, if you can recover exhaustion through sleeping out in the wilderness by camping, then it becomes a math balancing problem, right? Of how much exhaustion are you expected to get per day? How much can you recover per night of full rest? Like, if you are expected to gain one per day and then recover one per rest, might as well not gain the one per day, right? It becomes equal to zero, more or less. Um, kind of. Uh, or all it does is it forces you to rest, but there are other ways to force characters to rest, right? Other things to do, because if you don't rest, then like some games do that, you become deprived. Um, that other bad things happen, right? That all your rolls are at a penalty, etc. Like there's other ways, other penalties you can implement to force characters to rest, take a full rest every night. Um, so it essentially becomes a game of, can we expect characters to gain a certain amount of exhaustion every day and then recover one per night or something like that, or recover a die roll, right? 1d6 per night, or I don't know. Um, Essentially, the idea here is you can have forced march, right? Forced march equals 3 watches spent traveling. And what I want to prevent is I want to prevent this from becoming the standard, right? Because I can say, well, if you travel a third watch per day, then you become exhausted from that extra travel. But that's what I meant with exhaustion that sticks. So how do I draw a line here? This is what it's connected to, right? Essentially. So it's like if you force march, you gain one exhaustion. But if you're not expected to gain one exhaustion normally during the day for whatever reason, encounters or blah, just travel in general, and then you rest, even if you only recover one exhaustion per rest, you clear that exhaustion that you gain from force march, so you can force march every single day. And I don't want that to happen, right? So it really becomes a math game at this point. Or I need to just have a completely different system for exhaustion. I don't know yet. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't have any clear ideas for this. But that's the main thing I want to prevent. Right? That's what I meant with exhaustion that sticks. Um so players need to face like forced march needs to be a choice that comes with a cost. Like they can say we need to get somewhere quickly, so we will force march, but we will take into account that that will exhaust our characters somehow, right? Um, but I don't have a system idea for that yet. Uh, yeah, I will have to think. I might also just say, you know what? Let's shift and exhaustion fills up inventory slots and only recovers when you rest in a safe spot, and then we track injuries differently. Um, I don't know yet. I will have to look through what the goals of these systems are. Like, why am I tracking injury in this way? Why am I tracking exhaustion in this way? Um, what do I hope to achieve by tracking them in this way? Right? Do I want to say, oh, if you accrue a certain amount of injuries, your character dies? I don't know. Right? Some games do that, but it doesn't have to be. Um, right, but it seems like there needs to be some system, and also how restrictive do I want this to be? So if like exhaustion in games like Cairn and such, where it takes up inventory slots, is extremely restrictive. You do not want to get extra exhaustion because that means you carry less stuff. Um, and magic in those games also gives you exhaustion, which makes magic extremely prohibitive. Right, casting a spell gives you exhaustion. Um, so that's yeah, it's a very tough choice to make then for the player. Um, how restrictive do I want this to be? How many options do I want the players to have, and what do I want them to consider? Right? Is I believe my mouse might be running out of battery soon, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Um, so yeah, I don't know yet. Let me just write down tracking injuries and like how likely are you going to get injuries versus how likely are you going to get exhaustion, right? If you don't get into combat, if you try to evade and avoid every combat, are you even likely to get injuries in the first place? Right? Are inventory slot restrictions even going to be meaningful? You could come out of an entire adventure with one or two injuries, whereas you could expect to get out of an adventure with maybe 5, 6, 7 exhaustion, and that creates completely different expectations on how you prepare and plan for your adventure. Uh, tracking exhaustion, and so on. All right. Okay. At some point, once I have a system down, this will need playtesting. That's always the case. You can theory craft to a certain degree, but then you will need to see how, like, how does this actually behave in game? What kind of choices does this enable? What kind of consequences does it have? So yeah, but it is getting to be around that time where I have to end my Monday stream. I have to end earlier because I have a class that I need to teach. And yeah, that class is in the afternoon, and I need to get ready for that and everything. So yeah, let's get back to over here. But got quite a bit done. All right. Let's see who's on. Uh oh, hey. There's someone I haven't rated before, but that I would like to see how far in the stream is. 3.5 hours. I don't know how long it's gonna last still, but let's go say hi to I have 4K hunt. Why? Is it because people you were watching rated Khan? You do know that if you have too many tabs open, you don't count as a viewer. Um, but okay, let's go raid Karen, as in Crossing Sticks Karen, who is currently playing Devil May Cry 2. So also an oldie but goodie. All right, so slash raid Crossing Sticks _ Okay. I get it right? I hope so. Yeah, go say hi to Karen for me. And I do need to head off. But thank you all for being here. This was productive. I hope it was interesting for you as well. Maybe you learned a thing or two or got some ideas of your own. I should be back on Thursday with more Baldur's Gate 2. And yeah, I'm still thinking about adding a third stream a week. I will have to see how that works out. But for now, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you all a lot. Take care, stay hydrated, and bye-bye.